Hi, James.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing well. Happy Friday to you.
Yeah, same. I saw you had a nice time at the, what do they call that thing? The canteen club?
Yes. Yeah,
Cool, that's great.
I was in meetings yesterday afternoon and just looking out the window and seeing the blue sky and the lake. And I just thought, I just want to have a nice cold one and just sit on the deck up there and watch the world go by. And I did, and it was very therapeutic.
Beautiful,
Yeah.
beautiful. Oh, and we're live.
Oh, we are live. I guess I shouldn't be talking about my after hours activities then.
Well,
I think that
I
makes it
think,
more personable.
yeah, I think you're allowed to be an adult.
I am an adult, that's true, and generally responsible. For the most part.
Participating in the local economy.
That's right. Supporting local businesses. It's very important.
Yep. Yeah. Well, and it is a wonderful community, and opportunities like that to get together with people are valuable to what
They
we
are.
do.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. I was just telling Commissioner Hawkins this morning that I just love this place. I love the natural surroundings, the people. It's a real community.
Yeah.
And we do great things working together. The way that Cook County has gotten through the pandemic. It's a model. I mean,
It is.
and
Yeah.
it's the work. It's a lot of people working together. It's not one person or one organization leading the charge. It's really all of us.
It's
And
everyone. It
that's
absolutely.
that's not real common. There are a lot of places where you just don't see that kind of collaboration.
Right. Yeah. It's, our size enables us to do that pretty well
Hmm.
because the number of organizations and the number of people is more manageable than, as we've discussed, Hennepin County or Ramsey County, but still it has to be the will of all of us to do that work together.
Right.
And we do. It's wonderful.
Yeah. Hello, Kimber.
Hi.
Looks like we might have a small group today. But we'll wait a couple more minutes for others to log on. April, thanks for getting this set up. Appreciate it.
No problem. I'm taking a look here to see who accepted the invite to get a better idea of who we're waiting for.
Right.
So James, I just forwarded it to Paul Gettle, to our chief financial officer. So
Okay.
Lieutenant Fire Chief,
Mhm.
involved in a variety of other things. So thought he might be interested too.
Uh-huh. Great.
Yeah, he also serves as a bookkeeper and accountant for the EDA and Superior National, which the golf course
Yeah.
isn't probably relevant to this discussion, but certainly the EDA and our housing initiatives.
It looks like we had 6 that accepted the invitation, so we'll wait probably a couple more minutes.
Hey there, Paul.
Good afternoon.
How are you?
I'm doing well. Hi, Mary.
Hi, Paul.
So I once made the joke, Mary and Paul were on an email chain and I jokingly asked, where's Peter? And Paul noted that he actually has a brother named Peter. So that's where Peter was.
Twin brother at that.
An identical twin.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, if it's now 1:03 and we may not have others joining, so we can just go ahead and get started. And if we need to back up a little bit, we certainly can. So just wanted to bring folks together. I should mention we had our first meeting on Monday, and we had, about a dozen people, I think, logged on. We have invited folks from a number of community organizations, including the hospital, the clinic, ISD 166, Chamber, EDA, Grand Portage, the townships, trying to think of who else we included. But anyway, a number of key community stakeholders. But the list is by no means all inclusive. And so we are recording this meeting today and posting it on the county's YouTube site, as we did with the meeting on Monday. So I would just want to start by saying, if there are folks out in the community who are watching this after the fact and did not have the chance to participate in the meetings, but want more information about how we're about the process for determining how to use the American Rescue Plan dollars, we invite participation from anyone in the community. So if you're tuning into this after the fact, I'm James Yorkie, I'm the county administrator. You are always welcome to look me up on the county's website and to send me an email or give me a call at 218-387-3687. We want to hear from folks about how we should be using these dollars, because I feel that the more voices we have at the table, the better of a plan we'll come up with to spend the grant funds. So that's the purpose of the conversation today. And I'm going to be doing some screen sharing here. One moment, please. So just as a starting point, the county is receiving directly from the U.S. Treasury about $1,061,000, which can be used for a variety of purposes that we will talk about momentarily. I just want to go over kind of like the timeline for using the dollars first, because unlike the CARES dollars that we received at the beginning of 2020, there's a longer timeline for using these funds. Can everybody see the PDF with the highlighted timeline? Great. So we have a longer timeline for spending these dollars, which means we can be a little more deliberate about how we choose to spend them. And so these first two meetings are really just the start of a process to come up with a plan and a budget for the $1 million plus that we're getting. So key dates to know about. The bill was passed, I believe, March 11th, it was signed into law. And by law, the Treasury has to provide counties who are direct recipients of the funding half the funding within the first 60 days. So that funding has already come through. And then the second half of the funding we have to receive within a year of the passage of the bill. So before March 11th of 2022. Dates to be aware of, our first quarterly project and expenditure report is due by October 31st, 2021. Whether we will have any expenditures by that time remains uncertain, but we will certainly have a plan to move forward on spending those dollars. All funds that we receive under the rescue plan must be incurred and obligated by the end of 2024. So that's a good 3+ years away. And then all funds must be expended by the end of 2026. So that gives us a fair amount of time to make sure that all the dollars are used. And again, gives us a really nice time frame for coming up with a well thought out plan. So that's the timeline. I should mention too, we invited Grand Portage to participate in these meetings, and they are also, all the tribal nations are going to be receiving their own direct allocations from the Treasury under the rescue plan. I don't have any details about what Grand Portage will be receiving, but they are certainly, we want them to be part of this conversation as well, because they are part of Cook County, and some of the potential uses of the dollars could involve the tribal council. So we just want to make sure they're involved in this conversation as well. I am going to go on to, one moment, please. Let's see. Oops, that is not it. Let me stop sharing this for just a moment. Are there any questions related to the timeline or the amount of funding? Okay. And I see that Carol Stender has joined. Carol, can you hear me? Hey
I'm
there.
here. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Representing Great Expectations School Foundation.
Very good. Glad you could join us today, Carol.
Thank you.
And I don't know how long you've been logged on. Did you hear the summary of the timeline?
Yes,
Okay.
I did.
Very
Thank
good.
you.
Very good. Okay. So,
Hey, James,
yes, go ahead, Mary.
I have a question about the screen you were sharing.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just saw in a part of that document where it said there was information about payroll for county and public health and human services and some other entities. Will the county and the administrators of this funding receive administrative support to manage the funds?
I think yes, as a matter of course, we'll have to allocate some small portion to cover administrative costs because they will be considerable. You know, it's a federal grant and a fair amount of money. So yes, I expect we'll budget something for that, but you know, we'll keep that as low as it possibly can be.
Yep, good. Okay, thank you.
Yep. So. I thought I had this document open already, but I'm not finding it. There we go. All right. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen again. Here we go. Okay, so this is a summary of some of the eligible uses of the dollars. And I think actually in the email invitation that you received for this meeting, we provided a link to this document. So you may have seen this already, but I just want to go through it to summarize some of the eligible uses, and then we can talk about them as we go through this document. So, not surprisingly, supporting the public health response is an eligible use. So, a lot of the work that we've been doing in terms of prevention and protection and mitigating the spread of COVID-19, including vaccinations, those are eligible expenses. Kimber and Kate Serbaugh was on the Monday meeting. So to the extent that the hospital and the clinic have expenses that they're anticipating for the remainder of 2021 and beyond, those would be eligible uses of the dollars. And that includes also behavioral healthcare services, which, you know, there's increasingly more documentation about the mental health impacts that the pandemic has had on folks. So definitely something to consider. And then Mary, the thing you were asking about, payroll and covered benefits for public health, healthcare, human services, and public safety staff who are involved in the COVID-19 response. Another category is addressing negative economic impacts of the pandemic. Let me scroll down just a little bit. So delivering, excuse me, delivering assistance to workers and families for those who may have been unemployed, and survivors benefits for families of COVID-19 victims, supporting small businesses with loans and grants. And I'll mention, we did have under the CARES Act, and then also under the funding that was allocated by the state legislature back in December of last year, we have had a couple of rounds already of assistance for businesses. And and there are currently other resources available to businesses beyond the county dollars that we have right now for dealing with the impacts of the COVID-19 and the impacts of the pandemic. So, whether this would be something we would want to use these dollars for again, I think we're open to discussion on it. But there are some other uses that may be bigger priorities for the community, and we'll talk about those in a minute. So small business support, speeding the recovery of impacted industries, including tourism, travel, and hospitality, and then rebuilding public sector capacity by rehiring staff, replenishing state unemployment insurance funds, and implementing economic relief programs. So another eligible use is the replacement of public sector revenue loss to the extent that local governments have seen decreased revenues related to the pandemic. This is something that the dollars can be used for. I can tell you from my perspective, I'm not really taking a hard look at that because we've talked about lost revenue at the county level, and we have had some, but not significant enough, I think, that we would want to see a lot of these dollars go to that. Premium pay for essential workers is another eligible use. Folks who have been in key sectors like healthcare, grocery, food services, education, childcare, sanitation, and transit. And it's also prioritizing low to medium income workers. Going on to the next category, water and sewer infrastructure. And when I saw this, my ears perked up, or my eyes perked up, or whatever, my brain perked up, because this is definitely, I think, an opportunity for our community in terms of the housing shortage that I think everybody recognizes is perhaps one of the single biggest challenges we face as a community. ARP dollars can be used to support the expansion of water and sewer infrastructure. And there are currently some platted areas in the county that do not have that infrastructure, and with it, they could possibly be developed with a focus on workforce housing. So that's something that I'm keenly interested in. And I've heard feedback from folks in the community that they think that would be a good use of these dollars as well. Broadband expansion is another eligible use. And we had some discussion about this on Monday, about the idea of using these dollars to expand broadband access, particularly among lower and moderate income households, making sure that whatever digital divide there may be, that is preventing low to moderate income households from accessing broadband, that we could use these dollars for that purpose. So the last category is equity-focused services, basically trying to address health disparities, investing in housing, educational disparities, and promoting healthy childhood environments. And this does apply to qualified census tracts, which we don't have any, but there was conversation on Monday about the equity focus of this grant program. And I think that's something that I would personally like to see reflected in the decisions we make. And I suspect others will feel similarly. So there are some ineligible uses, which you can see here. I'm not going to read those. But generally speaking, there's a pretty diverse set of eligible uses that we could decide to allocate this funding for. And so really the conversation today is just what are the various folks on the meeting thinking about, in terms of how they would like to see these dollars spent.
I was looking at the detail on this, and they talked about educators getting a $13 an hour bump for work that they did due to pandemic, I guess, preparation. I'm thinking, I know that teachers spend a lot of time figuring out how they're going to do distance learning. And I was wondering if that was an eligible category.
Excuse me. Yes. So going back to premium pay for essential workers, yes, education and childcare is called out as two professions where these dollars would be an eligible use. Kimber and Paul, any thoughts from the hospital's perspective?
Well, the one thing that was mentioned, I guess, maybe not at the hospital, but part of it, I guess it would include the hospital, is the Armor radio system throughout Cook County. So that's a benefit that would help, all the EMS, fire departments, county highway department, that sort of thing. If there's a category that might fit into, I mean, that's just a huge spectrum that how it would benefit the whole county.
Mm-hmm.
Paul, can you describe where that is currently available and where it is not available?
Well, I'm thinking more, I know the county has a good handle on what towers might be missing, and I know there's maybe even a few under construction right now, but I'm thinking more on the local level, the handheld radios, which are, I don't know, $3,000 a piece. And, Lutzen alone has 20 of them. So do the math with all the fire departments and ambulance and EMS and highway department and every, Portage. We probably need 200 radios, and the ones we have are getting harder and harder to find parts for and repair.
So actually, we have 800 radios
Okay.
in the county, and those were all purchased, James, for your benefit, with grant money initially. All the entities, I think, were made aware that they should be budgeting for replacement of those. And a lot of places are actually replacing them, kind of now starting to, the school is replacing theirs right now. Different ones are. We've managed to get some used ones when people break down on them. So, it's not quite like all of them. I think that is an issue for smaller fire departments or something, but it's something also for about 8 years, people know that they were going to eventually be on the hook for. So the infrastructure itself, the tower infrastructure, we've got a pretty good plan with using self-service revenues to keep maintaining that now. Maybe eventually we can use some of that revenue to replace radios too. But it is timely right now. Those radios are starting to be at end of life. So just a little more information on that.
Thanks, Rena.
I think as your ears perked up with the discussion of the support for housing, that to me is, if I were voting, that would be my number one priority. It just impacts everybody. The ability for housing, for us to be able to get professionals, whether they're, education, staff of the county, staff of the hospital, the care center, anything that we can do to help address the issues that we are currently having. I would be all in favor of that, and actually almost to the exclusion of other items. That's how significantly important I think that particular topic is to our county right now.
Mhm.
I 100% agree with Kimber on that. You know, there are other, you know, like broadband is a big deal in other places, but we've got good broadband here, and we know that Arrowhead has gotten more grant money, you know, to keep expanding that.
Yeah.
I think that other infrastructure of water, sewer, housing is the most critical need right now.
Mhm.
Something else that popped into my head before I forget about it, you know, defining some type of maybe even a zero interest loan program for water and sewer, you know, more easily accessible to the private developers, you know, less hurdles to jump through. I think would be beneficial to give them, you know, low interest or zero interest loans just to help with their infrastructure so they can consider building things on their own rather than getting a handout.
Mhm.
And then it can be repaid and it can be used for the next project 10 years from now. I mean, one small example I'm thinking of, I used to own property up at the Mink Ranch, and we have a joint sewer system that has been failing, and it's, you know, it's relatively low income housing up there, and all of a sudden we have a sewer system that needs a lot of repair, and we're kind of left out on our own to try to deal with that. So it's just one example.
Mhm.
So Paul, or something maybe like a mix of grant and grants and low interest or no interest loans. So there's kind of a little bit of a support, but also, you know, some skin in the game.
Definitely.
Yep.
Well, I certainly am all about housing. And I attended this meeting on Monday as well, and I shared a couple of thoughts about how that situation might be helped with these funds. One is based on an example of a grant program that we had at IRRB when I was there, where a developer of housing for single family homes could receive a grant of up to $25,000 to help pay for infrastructure costs. So hooking up to water and sewer, or building septic and drilling well, and, you know, power, and just if it's raw land, just clearing and grading the land, you know, those are all very costly components. So that's one example. And then the other one is to explore with the city, and I have no idea if $1 million scratches the surface of this at all, but there are neighborhoods in Grand Marais that, like, the water and sewer doesn't go to the next block, or it doesn't go across the street. So there are lots that people have talked with me about in the time that I've been here where they'd like to build, but because of the cost of extending the water and sewer, it hasn't happened. So that would also open up more potential property for housing.
Yeah.
And then, James, I wanted to ask, did you receive a message from Jim Boyd today?
I may have. Honestly, I've been tied up and haven't checked emails recently.
Okay. Well, I was speaking with him earlier today about a number of things, and he mentioned this. He said he was going to try to get off an email to you, but that I don't want to speak for him, but I'm going to try to recapture what he said.
Yeah.
And his thought this morning was that the state of Minnesota legislature is considering $250 million for frontline workers
Mm-hmm.
and other things. So he suggested that we might want to watch what happens at the state level, because if those funds become available to Cook County to help with the frontline workers that, for example, the teachers that Carol was speaking about earlier,
Yeah.
that might be a potential. And then also in another part of the American Rescue Plan, there is the child tax credit, which perhaps will help people pay for childcare. It won't necessarily make more childcare available, but it would help with that expense, so that we, gather all that other information about other things that are happening and include that while we consider our options.
Yes, I think that's a really great point, because, the direct allocation to the counties is only one small portion of the overall rescue plan. And there are lots of other pots of funding that are going to different organizations for different purposes. And we would do well to make sure we understand the big picture as we're considering how to spend these dollars.
Yeah.
So Carol, thinking about what you asked about earlier, about the premium pay for teachers, thinking about, I'm sure the housing issue is something that also impacts great expectations and your efforts to recruit teachers and staff. And just wondering what you're thinking about those two things in comparison, and how they should be weighted.
Well, there's no, I mean, I agree with everybody else that lack of affordable housing in the area is such a huge topic. And I was also thinking getting affordable housing is a support for all the small businesses. So I was wondering, if you can tie that small business piece into the water and sewer, and thus some more housing. Right now, I'm not aware that we have a difficulty finding teachers, but I'm new. I'm new in the business here, so I'm sure that probably has been an issue in the past. We have a new director that's starting this summer, and not sure where she's living, but find that out as well. The other thing I was wondering, James, is there is a provision in there for public safety, and you were talking about radios and whatnot. We're going to have to change our bus configuration to comply with safe routes to school when we add on to our building next year. And I was just wondering if, that would fall into the public safety piece.
I don't know. I would have to do some more digging to answer that question.
Okay.
I think that's probably another area where there would be funding outside of the rescue plan for supporting that kind of work.
Okay. Those are my thoughts.
Yeah. Thanks, Carol. So I'm hearing, to summarize the feedback from this small group, housing should be our top 3 priorities. Okay.
So I had the opportunity to participate on a leading age, which is the Association for Long-Term Care board meeting on Tuesday. And when asked, the group of individuals participating, they were asked, what is your top priority? And again, think of, all these aging services. It was workforce. And so that's why, I guess, for me, housing, it addresses and at least helps us with the issue of workforce. So, in this arena, housing.
Yep. Well, that will be a very easy meeting summary to write up.
Anything to help, James, anything to help.
Right. Well, are there, any other thoughts? I will say, very candidly, I I was thinking, you know, spending $1 million on water and sewer infrastructure, it'll be gone like that, and it won't be enough to meet our needs. I mean, it'll be a start, but, and that's why I kind of like the idea of, you know, I think we need to be really creative about how we leverage these dollars, how we extend the life of the dollars through some revolving loan fund or something like that, so that it can continue to help us meet that need.
Yeah, and in terms of leverage, there are other sources. The state of Minnesota has a public facilities fund, and IRRB has some community infrastructure funds, and I'm sure if we look around, we could find some other sources as well that we might be able to leverage at least some of these dollars into more to, because you're right, $1 million doesn't buy a lot of pipes in the ground installed and connected to anything, but it's a good start. It's a very good place to start.
So to that point, Mary, I was just thinking that if you haven't, maybe you could use some of this money as your seed money to get the HRA started. You know, to fund the first year or two, or phase it in, you know, before the county takes over support of it or whatever, to get it started so that it can start tapping into some of these other grants in addition to this, you know, gives it some seed money to get some projects going and sets up the office so that they can start working on these other grants to make that go further.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't know the eligibility well enough to know if that's possible, but it's a great idea. Yeah, for sure.
Or you set up your HRA and then you use this money, you kind of put it in their hands to do some of those projects while they get some other things going. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, it seems like that the way we've been thinking about it prior to this brainstorming right now, that, you know, the administrative cost of the HRA is really the smallest piece. It's chasing after all the other resources. That is going to be the big side of the big numbers on the books. So I think any money that we can bring to projects is really going to be important. But I like that idea as well, Rena. I like it all. I like everything. You know, there's so much passion and momentum going now, I think, with so many people coming together and thinking hard and working hard on housing. I feel like things are we've learned a lot in the last 5 years, and now the seeds are gonna start to grow something bigger.
Well, kudos to you, Mary, for all your hard work on that. I wonder if that might be a good question to pose to Elizabeth, you know, and say, how does she think these monies could be used to help us get that office going or getting kicked off or something?
I'll make a note. Yeah.
Let her do some work around that so we don't have to.
Yeah.
I like that idea a lot. I mean, that seems to be at this point, at least, kind of the biggest stumbling block. And I think, you know, the commissioners are going to, I mean, any suggestion to increase the levy, even if it's for a purpose that we all agree is very important, it's just politically a tough thing to do. And so if we could use these funds to kickstart our HRA efforts, that would be a wonderful thing.
It would. It certainly would. And, you know, much like the EDA, once you've started taking baby steps and had some successes, then you gain more support from the community, and that might bode well for this, because I think this HRA is essential to have another person. There's just too much for one person to do. It's just not possible. There's so much community and economic development happening in Cook County. It's truly amazing. It's wonderful.
And I mean, honestly, the HRA, the workload there could easily be multiple positions. And I'm not suggesting that we go there, but I'm just saying having that person who would be dedicated to that topic would really help us gain a lot of speed. So
Absolutely.
yeah.
Well, I'll write an email to Elizabeth when we end this meeting and ask her if she can dig that out easily for us.
Great.
And Ella, Elizabeth and Ella.
Mhm. Well, Ella's in Alaska, so she can't.
Oh,
help
yeah,
you.
that's right.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, any other thoughts about this before we wrap up? I mean, clearly there are a lot of details to work out about, if we can use these funds for toward the creation of an HRA. There's going to have to be a lot more discussion about the details of that. And these two meetings that we're having this week are not the last opportunity for a community conversation around this topic. I think we're going to have more discussion. But this at least will give us the opportunity to go back to our board of county commissioners and say, we've talked to folks in the community. Here's some preliminary ideas. Everybody recognizes the importance of housing. And so I think there's pretty strong desire to use most, if not all, of these dollars for that purpose.
Another thing to keep in mind, I think, is I believe now they're getting closer to passing the big infrastructure package at the federal
Right.
level.
Saw that.
And I will be curious to see if any of those funds trickle down to local jurisdictions for roads and bridges and those kinds of things, which might also be beneficial to all of us taxpayers in the county and all of our needs on those levels as well.
Yeah.
But maybe that's just all about, interstates and federal highways. I don't know, but.
I don't think it is. I think it's about other kinds of infrastructure too, Mary,
Is it?
including water systems and
Um,
I mean, it's no secret that the Grand Marais sewer whole system is getting old too,
Mhm.
and is pretty taxed with the amount of people that come here certain times of the year. So that may be something the city will want to look into.
right. Yeah.
But circling back to the point you made, Mary, about making sure that we are also keeping tabs of other, not only other sources of funding, but other pieces of ARP that are coming through the state to address some of those other needs. Because Carol, I heard you. I know that you've got an interest in seeing some of these funds perhaps go to compensation for frontline workers, including your teachers. And it sounds like there will be other funds to do that as well. And so just making sure that that we're not looking at these funds in isolation, but really understanding what the big picture is and how our community may be able to access funding in some of these other areas to address multiple needs. Any other thoughts as we're closing? Not hearing or seeing any. Well, I've never disappointed anybody by ending a meeting early. So if there is nothing else, we can adjourn, and I will wish you all a good weekend. And we'll be, again, summarizing the information that we've gotten from these discussions, sharing it with the board at the next business meeting, the first Tuesday, or the second Tuesday of July. So, all righty.
Thank you, James, for inviting us to participate in the conversation.
Thanks for being